It is now 4:13 p.m. on Thursday, the 25th of April, 2024. The meeting of the Library Board of Trustees is now called to order. As you know, these meetings are open to the public, and information on participating in today's meeting and providing public comment, including the voting by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting agenda, which is online at Monterey.org. We ask attendees to keep phones and
Hey,
devices.
hey, you there? Okay. This French yesterday got me all fucked up here. Jesus Christ, I still don't think I'm streaming. They're doing it to me. Oh my God. Hang on. Let me. I'll call you right back. Sorry. I know. I know. I know. Yeah. Yeah. I see it. I hear it, but I'm not seeing it on the stream. I added to stage. Jesus Christ. I'm seeing it on the screen. I'm hearing it on the screen. I'm not seeing it on the YouTube, or the StreamYard. Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. Is it on YouTube? Is it there? I don't know anymore. Yeah. Okay. So you see it. What are you seeing? Just the ocean view picture? Okay. Why am I not getting the video? Hang, hang on a second.
Should we just pause the meeting until I see it go by? Or you can,
Can you do that?
yeah, because there's nobody else online.
Okay.
There's nobody on
Pause
Zoom.
for a second. Pause it for a second. Okay. They're going to pause the meeting for a second. I don't know what the fuck. I saw it. Jesus Christ. I was all set to go until she got here. Jeez. Oh, Lord. She sent the link to Kodiak. I couldn't get into Kodiak, so I had to send it to Amstab. I tried to log in, then I had to send it to me. So I got the link. Then she didn't. I'm in the meeting as a panelist.
what it would turn on so that I could just turn it off.
So is the meeting
Not recorded.
available for others to watch later if it's not now? I mean, if somebody wanted to.
In this recording, I can try and trim out some of that part where actually, I don't know.
Well, like city council meetings can be watched later after the day of the meeting on a YouTube recording, correct? They can edit it later, can't they?
And do you have a way of knowing who's watching
I
it?
don't have a way of knowing, I have a way of knowing, so. We do have another. So someone that we all know that just came on, probably because the YouTube wasn't functioning.
But is participating on YouTube the same as participating?
Okay, perfect. So I'll just start the recording again. And you were, sorry, I was a little bit taken by this. So you were about to do the consent, there was nobody on mic for the consent.
So,
Recording in progress.
consent agenda. Do we have any comments from trustees?
I had a couple of questions on the activity report. Okay, can I go ahead? First of all, about the ADA accessible pillar booth. Want to say a few words about that? Just who-
Yeah, so would be basically an additional, somewhat of like a study room and inside of the library. And so what this is like
like a phone booth?
similar to the size, but it's wheelchair accessible because some of the other privacy booths have a lip for the door so that you have to walk over a lip. And this is in there. So the door is at the carpet level. So you could have it there. So it looks similar to basically adding in, think of having like a cubicle at a desk, but then like walled in with acoustic panels on the inside and a ceiling and power, like a charging brick inside of that. And so when it's not used for ADA, you could use it as like for like a memory lab, like recording, or you could use it for group study if we put a table in there or something like that.
And it's installed in a room inside the library?
You just be inside the library area. So instead, the thought is basically, Kim and I were discussing this earlier, is whether to put it near like where the periodicals are, the newspapers, where people use like a private study, because that's one of the main things people ask for is an additional kind of private room for either themselves to like do like a Zoom call or to study in where they're not hearing noise in there. So this provides another kind of a booking area. And then so in there where we have tables, this could just be put in there and you could move it at a later date.
I see, so it's movable.
It is movable. I mean, typically you install it there, but it's not like permanent
I see.
addition on there.
How many people can be in this?
I mean, typically it's made for one ADA, but depending on if it's not something you want to do for ADA, you could put a table in there for up to 4 people.
Okay, 4 people.
Yeah.
So.
And will people who want to use it sign up and request, unlock the door for me, please, Ms. Librarian, that kind of thing?
Yeah, same thing as we do like for the solarium. So this
Yeah.
would just run under that conference room, the small conference room policy. And then we basically book those through our LibCal. So people get a certain number of bookings per week per their email. So it'll track our usage too. So we'll be able to track the room statistics too through our portal.
And a user would have a limited amount of time, like, well, you can have it for an hour or something like that.
Right. So we send thing like 2 hours. So basically the thought is that you provide a space like this, which it helps solve a couple of things, which is like you say, X number of hours per day, but then also that one person doesn't come in, the first person every morning, and then just put all their stuff in there and say, this is my space. Like it's really like we can monitor it, book it, have a lock on the door.
Is the person visible from the outside of the booth?
Yes. So it's a full glass door, full glass on the outside, so you could see inside as well.
And kudos to getting it funded. The whole thing's funded from the grant.
Whole thing's funded through the state.
Yeah.
And so the state, when I believe they're in the middle of working on this and that they will kind of just come in and do the installation on that.
Okay, my next question.
So is this a kind of place where you can have a one-on-one meeting with somebody?
I think it depends on what kind of furniture we put in there. It's big enough to,
Uh-huh.
I think think off the top of my head, I think it's 89 inches by 50 inches.
Hmm.
So it's, like about a little bit over 4 feet by, 7.5 feet. So it's like a tiny kind of a room,
Okay.
but it helps because what we get right now is like in the solarium, we do have like literacy pairs that meet in the solarium quite often. But then there's also people that are just one-off that have like a single person wanting a room and want a smaller room. So we'll have, I think at the solarium, which can fit like 12 people, and then having one that could fit, 1 person to 4 person. It's having a little bit more activity, more space for people in the community.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So next question. I see that the budget will be presented at a special council meeting April 24th. Since this is April 25th, what happened?
That's a very high level budget
Okay.
request. So they don't go over any line items or any kind of department budgets. Was basically this is the revenue streams. These are our major kind of challenges that the city faces, or kind of streams that we are looking at. This is the overall expenditures, the overall revenues. And does council have any priorities? Now, I didn't write down on, I think, because, there was the survey, right? And so they didn't present all the data from the survey because there was the budget survey. There was the budget survey and the budget meetings that happened right there. So they didn't go over all the data on that. There was a very brief, like, these are your top 5 items, and these are the top 5 that will be people ranked as to remove in terms of when there's budget challenges. I didn't get a chance to write those down. I was in the room and I was about to write them down, and the slides went through. So I have to go back to the YouTube later on to kind of get a sense of what those were on there. I know special events and museums were in some of the top 5. Bottom 5 were some of the things like city facilities, police, fire, some of these other things I saw that. So, but I'm interested to see where it is and if there's other comments or anything there.
And so when will you find out? I mean, when do you find out the details? Whether these.
I think June is typically, I don't have the exact date, but there will be a June meeting potentially where the budget will be passed. And I think they'll go into more detail at that time with it. But they did on the high level they said they listed these positions specifically on a listing of what positions were going to be there. There were no comments from council about removal or addition of library staff, but it did talk. It had the teen librarian that basically said additional full-time librarian, then removal part-time librarian. That's how it was listed. It was listed as an addition of 1 position or removal of 1 position. Is how that was listed on there. So it says addition of 3 positions, but
take away the 3/4 position and add the 1
right,
full-time position. I see.
right. So it's essentially, I think, a 2 FTE kind of addition on there.
I have one more question, and that is, are you still driving the bookmobile? So.
It's Kim and I and a couple other people. So tomorrow, I think I'm going to Bayview Academy.
Yeah, so what is the status of finding someone besides yourself to be the bookmobile?
Well, we're trading off. Everybody's jumping in and helping out in the bookmobile. Happy to say everyone's a great team player here with the staff and trading it off. But Kim just finished the review. I think we had 94 qualified applicants. So it was a very high pool of applicants really interested in this role.
And this is a full-time position?
This is a full-time position. So yeah, we had 94 applicants, which is fantastic. Kim just finished going through the applicants. So I can't go into all the details, of course, on that side, but we do have a panel squared away of our neighboring libraries that will serve as the first level panelists. And then after that, once we get that review, so Kim sent in all her rating sheets. We're waiting for our human resources department to give them a number of candidates that they then send off to work with the 3 panelists that we identified to basically represent us. And then once they come back, then we get the results from that. Then those qualified candidates would interview with us, and depending on where they live or their other jobs, hopefully get them in soon. And I would be interested if that list is still available for the other job, which I'm not sure. That's another HR question, because it's the same library assistant, but it's regular part-time versus full-time. So we'll see more, because especially if we have a great list, we love to be able to recruit from it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, before we vote on approving the consent agenda, one little one, when we were talking about the private work booth or whatever, how do you pronounce that? Pillar?
Pillar.
Pillar, okay. Further down though, we're talking about the pickup lockers.
Yes.
And there are two locations identified for where they'll be installed. How were those picked? Why, I guess mostly I'm wondering why the sports center?
So part of that, there's a couple of reasons. One is we want a place that we have network connectivity, about putting it on a secure network for having transfer of data and information from the library network. So because it's going to have to transfer the patron data that, like when we check out, like a person comes in. So we looked at city facilities. And so we reached out to different partners, primarily in the recreation department, and to say, which facilities do you have that might be available to use on this? Looking at we got some of the results before also about where to get services where people wanted to see services. I was particularly interested in somewhere in New Monterey, because I find that, getting around the curve, and I live right now in New Monterey, that like on the top of the hill, that there's, I often go to PG Library too. And that's like, where do you go? But there wasn't there's Archer Park, which is occupied right now, I think by First Night, Schulte Park, but they didn't have a good place for that outside of Schulte, but that's the recreation center. So basically we want something that the city has a facility, the city has a building there that we could tie into the city network. It's city power for operating some service on there.
And some way of letting the library staff know if Joe Blow has picked up his book, and then now there's a locker free to put another one in there and tell somebody.
That'll manage all online. That would we could track that, like we could track the usage like remotely about like what's
But you
free.
need the connection at the site.
It's just the connection about having a secure, because otherwise you then pay for secured wireless communication, which can be spotty through town, like having a secured cellular signal. And so we needed like a hardwired signal on that side. The Montecito Fire Station, we're outside of Montecito Park, where we've been trying to improve, like the city's been working to improve the park. They were very keen on in getting access to that, because my other site that I was looking at was Casanova Oak Knoll, but there was not working with recreation. They could not identify a good spot that I could put it there either. So I was trying to find another spot. These are also sites that I talked with the vendors about, that like, if we put these in a site and it's not working, can you move them to another site? Like they're not something that you have to keep them there in perpetuity.
The lockers you're talking.
The lockers, yeah. But it's something that, think about, if you see ones that like, they're essentially similar to ones that you'll see if you go to Whole Foods, the Amazon lockers, they have them at Lucky's and some of these stores. They're very similar to that. And they're just a little outdoor canopy. But we needed accessibility working through there. And Bill Rothschild, who's who just came back as the Monterey Sports Center manager, he's very willing and interested in partnership and from the work that he did up in Oregon when he left Monterey and went up to Oregon and opened a new sports center up there about having internal library and services. So I think on that site, there's a lot of traffic. Also, there's a lot of foot traffic at Monterey Sports Center. So it'd be getting people outside of our 10 to 6 hours, getting up, people that go in there early for classes or after hours, after the library's closed. It just expands the access to that on that site.
Now, are you expecting to have the lockers inside or outside of?
Outdoors.
Outdoors. The reason I asked that is because, and Marcia can correct my memory, because when we had G4 do all the different proposals for upgrading the library building and everything, part of at least one of them was the lockers. And my recollection, tell me if I'm wrong, Marcia, was that there were too many potential negatives and we didn't like the idea of lockers outside, primarily for, I guess, after hours safety reasons. And if they're at a place like the sports center, why not put them inside and let people just walk into the lobby? You know, they don't have to go and jump in the swimming pool first, but just, you know, go into the lobby, get their book out of there. Now, at Whole Foods, there are Amazon lockers, both inside and outside. And I always have them drop it off at my doorstep, so, but, so I don't know exactly how the Amazon drop off and pickup works there, but
But
it seemed to make, but you had some objections to the lockers on the outside.
I don't remember that, but I do know that the sports center closes, you know, 8 and 9 o'clock at night. So if you want to come at 10 o'clock at night and pick up your book.
Yeah,
And the sports center does have parking, that, you know, so you can just drive right in and walk up.
you know, if it was by that circle like in the front of the
Yeah,
building.
I don't know where in the sports center to put it, but, you know, some.
The thought we have is looking with Bill is to do it outside underneath. There's a security camera right there.
Hmm,
It's right next to the bike racks.
uh-huh,
You're familiar with the bike racks are right where there's the loop. You go right up on the loop.
yeah.
And then there's the bike racks right there. So that was the kind of like, it's an outdoor site, but it's on city property, but it has the camera right outside there. And the other one would be in front of where Montecito Park is, right next to it. There's the fire station and there's a little free library right there. And there's a plat of the ground. And the thought was to do it right there, to put a pad of concrete. And basically the fire department was interested. I talked with the fire department about, you know, they just had their front garden redone and we didn't want to tear out a garden and put it against the building. And I said, you know, there's an area next to the tree and the fence line where it gets good visibility for them, for the firefighters. It doesn't prevent them from doing their side. The thought about the inside for the Monterey Sports Center was just that I have a kind of a longer term vision where I think we could go with different kind of objects. Like if we were doing more library of things with the sports center, where if you said, okay, we want to do more hiking equipment or do stuff like tennis rackets, you know, you could do some more kind of stuff like that in the lobby or something that's really, you know, sports related and activity related. But the outside, not everybody that goes past that area is a Monterey Sports Center member. And so being outside basically of both sites really allows it to be, you know, a site where people can come in. Anybody would be able to come in that's just a library member and choose that as a site. I wouldn't want somebody to say like choose the Monterey Sports Center as a thing and just feel awkward coming into the Sports Center lobby and not being a member. So the thought was just, that was kind of a discussion with Bill on that side. I know some of the older lockers did not have good weatherproofing or good canopies even several years ago. That was some of the problems, especially being in a humid climate like Monterey. And I've talked with the different vendors about that, about their weather sealing and canopies that have been adapted over years, because I know colleagues that put them in, for example, in Seattle and, you know, different areas of Washington, which are very rainy. And over time, years or two, they learned a lot about that. So they've changed in the past couple of years in terms of that. I would say somewhere like some of these sites that have it internal, there are different options for internal, which are much more robust in terms of like having a set aside collection, but you don't want to have those outside, especially in this humid climate. So these are really like the one we're potentially looking at would allow us to manage it and then have somebody come in there to manage the holds like twice a week.
So kind of like having an outdoor ATM at a bank.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, I'm sure there are security cameras there.
Yeah, and some of these different units, depending on how you do it, do have security cameras built into the units. Or you can add them into there. I haven't looked into that as a specific, because you run into the things with California government code regarding you know, videotaping people's use of library resources, which is always kind of a little dicey right there. So, but I think, you know, having them on facilities where we can manage the you know, the power, the network, security would all be ideal, and having us access, like if something were to go down, we know, and I don't have to file for an easement or get like a contract with a private vendor.
And so, for example, when you put a hold on something, instead of just saying you want it at PG or Monterey, you would say, do you want it at these places? And you would indicate which one, and then it would show up there. Is that kind of-
Right. And I know from colleagues that have done these in the past, it's, people have done they do it different ways. Most of the time, yeah, it is like an additional site, same way we do like Bookmobile right now. You can just choose Bookmobile as your pickup site. So this would just say, whether Monterey Sports Center or however that is. And, I talked to like some of my colleagues at San Francisco, and they just added some to like Treasure Island, because of like, or different services, because they don't have full library branches at some of these communities. So that's where they do that same thing where they add it as a drop in. And it always depends on the site of how busy they get, because some places have had some cities have very long wait lists for it. Other ones, not so much. And so it's like, once you put the items in the system, like it'll be in transit until you put it in the locker, close the locker up. And then basically when a person picks their item up, because all of our items are RFID tagged, when it takes it off outside of the box, it's automatically checked out. So it's not like you have to take it out, scan it or anything like that. It's like you scan your card, pops open your appropriate locker, you remove your items, and you're good to go.
So did you think, as far as New Monterey, Hilltop Center, did you look at that?
We looked at Hilltop as well. And thanks for reminding that one too. Yeah, we did talk about that because we also do Bookmobile service there as well. Right. And so we looked at some of those ones, and they just did not have like a site that they provided that would have been there. They weren't as enthusiastic, I would say, about. So that's where the Monterey Sports Center was very enthusiastic about providing service, about getting folks in there to do that in there. I think to me, a bit of it has to be like a proof of concept as well, to say like, are these going to work or are they not at these sites? And I think they would.
Trying those too.
Yeah.
Give you a lot of information.
Yeah. And I think I like because when you have those data, you get those data points when you put them at a site, because you have a certain number of lockers, you have a certain number of holds, you can, pull statistics about circulation at that site. And then you could really see like what sites are doing better than others.
And the installation of them isn't necessarily done with the goal or for the purpose of increasing circulation of library materials like books. It's just to provide an alternate place for the patron to pick it up.
It's increasing access.
We don't expect by having these lockers, we're going to have X% more books checked out. They just won't walk into the library. They'll walk to the locker instead.
Right. I think it's increasing access to the community. And I think that's one of the things the same thing with Bookmobile. Bookmobile, a lot of times, and I think it's a bit of it also is PR in my mind, that you have like outside of Monterey Sports Center, or outside of the fire station, you now have like, get a library card, and maybe somebody that doesn't have a card thinks about getting it because, hey, now I can pick it up my stuff here.
I'm thinking the visibility, it sort of puts the library on the minds of people who may not be thinking about it in a place like the Sports Center, particularly.
Especially if there's adequate signage
Mhm.
in and around the things. The only other thing I wanted to ask about before we presumably approve the entire consent agenda, draft RFP for Edda's Cafe.
Yes.
Could you explain that? I was new. I didn't realize we were going out for RFP for Edda's Cafe. And what does it? We're just saying, hey, anybody in the world wants to come here. What would you do if we approved your application?
So yeah, I thought I've put this on it might have been several months, but I put this back on some agenda several months back. And what it is we're not limiting it, but we're hoping there would be a nonprofit partner that would operate Edda's Cafe. I think I brought this up back on an agenda item, just talking about, it was basically the revenue and expenditures were basically a wash around that time. But the problem was before is that having library staff as the backup and having staff do the cafe work is not ideal.
Yeah, no,
So
I remember that.
yeah, so then really going out to RFP to have somebody hopefully a nonprofit partner that looks at it as service-based, where the cafes at the libraries, because we have so many different cafes in the area that are in walking distance, this might be a better kind of a service than a huge commercial enterprise on something of that size, because they don't have an internal place and it's not a commercial kitchen. It is a prep kitchen, or basically it's not commercially rated, so they can't cook in items there. They can reheat items there. So the thought about the RFP basically gives priority to people that provide healthy options. We'll have like a taste test. We'll have the proposal of what kind of service and hours they will do.
Can the RFP specify we are seeking a nonprofit partner to run Ed's Cafe? I mean, can we be, that overt about it?
We can say it's preferred, and if we have somebody, we could potentially go directly to council and say, this is the vendor that we want to work with, I believe. But the RFP and the contract would allow, because people have not provided, hey, we really want to be the sole provider of this. And I think providing it out as a opportunity to see what's out there and whether a nonprofit looks at it as like a workability type of a program as well.
Yeah, I would think that it's a different clientele also. It's kind of like the after-school kids want a snack. They're not going to go to Alta Bakery and spend $7 for a latte. They want a cup of soup or a granola bar or something like that. So it's not going to compete really. It's a different.
It might be different, but I think what we're looking at also, that's what I mean, we're putting in the RFP about healthy options, because at the same time, we don't want it to be like, come in there and get like a candy bar and a soda. Like you want to provide something in there that.
Bananas.
And because if somebody does have a commercial kitchen and a commercial enterprise, you could bake it off site and resell it there. And that's the thing about like a workability program, where if you have like a culinary program, let's say at the MPC, or a culinary program at another school, can they make the items offsite in the commercial kitchen that is basically reviewed by the county health department, and then sell the items there? So that's where I thought it's like to reaching out. Once that goes out, then you reach out to the different partners and say, would you like to put in a proposal? And I know, that would hopefully get a couple of good applicants out there so we could take a look.
Sounds great.
I would suggest that when this comes up for discussion with either council or city administration, we might make a point of pointing out that one of the strategic priorities of the city council is to, quote, provide learning opportunities and foster community connection through the Monterey Public Library, end quote. And that would certainly fit in with your idea of partnering with another local nonprofit, especially a small local nonprofit.
Right.
But it would be, tying it right in with a stated on the website strategic priority under the quality of life category. There are like 6 or 8 different categories of things. And in the strategic priorities under that one was that quote that I just read.
Thank you.
And that concludes the questions I have. So we can still discuss it, but I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Does Jennifer have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
JD?
Second.
I'd like to hear more about this VR tour. Is that going to be posted on the library site? Is that the plan? Biological laboratories?
That would be on the city museums page. So we are looking, we have a date.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up with the Steinbeck Center. We are looking, they're coming out to do kind of a review of the lab, and they want to add some more content on their website. So we talked about them coming out and actually having the link, so we can have the link on our site as well.
Right.
Because improving accessibility of the lab also through VR has been one of my goals there. So I think that would be great if they have somebody that they're paying to do the work, and we could just share the resource.
So I
So it
thought
would
since
be
it's
the
part
same
of the
kind of tour
library
as-
and museum thing, it should be on our website.
Well, it's museum. So there's monterey.org/museums.
Okay,
So this is just under the museum and cultural arts updates, because this is where I'm working on the lab and all that. So
Mm.
that's a partnership. We work with the Steinbeck Center on different events too.
So the tour would be somewhat like the one that you have given.
I believe so. We're having them connect with a docent that provides a tour and then come through to see what kind of story, what are they trying to do about the story for coming in there. I don't exactly know how they're going to do it, whether they'll have a docent there and film it and then it's done through VR that way. So we're hoping to have a meeting pretty soon with them about that, but that would be a really interesting concept for us.
okay, we're ready for the motion.
Yeah, I made the motion and Marcia seconded.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Public appearance. Are there any participants? No? Okay. Next, we have approve expanding library open hours for fiscal year 2024 to 2025.
And that's me. All right. Thank you, Chair Joshi. I will say, so this is tied to the, we have our council agenda potentially coming up. And as I stated, we don't have the full approval yet of the budget, but I have met with Kim several times to discuss kind of like what hours we need to open in July, if we are going to do staffing on that, and what we need for the very minimal coverage is those positions that we're asking for from the budget. So if the budget goes through as passed, the thought would be that we could open on Mondays beginning in the upcoming fiscal year. And so I've provided a couple points of context for you, for all of our trustees here today. Number one, I don't recommend that we open a full day on a Monday with just the addition of a regular part-time library assistant, because if that additional person would also be helpful in kind of doing library outreach, doing lockers, kind of like in the mornings, helping out with the book drops and the teen library. And it's not enough staffing to open a full day of service, in our opinion. With that also, because I know one of the goals is to provide service to the teens here in Monterey. I've added the 2024 to 2025 school year calendar, which has been posted by Monterey High School, which is 4 days a week. The release time is 3:30, and Wednesdays and early release times is 2:35. And then Monte Vista TK through 8 has not released their calendar. We don't get as many of their students just walking down from the campus after school. But their normal release time is 2:20 p.m. and Wednesday's early release time is 12:50 p.m. So with the 4-hour shift of service, we're looking at I have this chart right here just in terms of our neighbors, what might be easier for people to kind of remember everything. My recommendation would be doing something along the lines of Pacific Grove, which would be 2 to 6, because we are so much partner with Pacific Grove on a lot of service. And they would love to see us, I'll say PG would love to see us open on Monday, because a lot of our members go over there to PG on Mondays to get service. So that 2 to 6 would provide us cover the early release days as well in there. It doesn't give us the Monte Vista TK through 8, as I mentioned on that part, for the early release days on Wednesdays, but I don't think we get as many people walking down the hill from Monte Vista from 7th and 8th grade. So with that, you'll see here Seaside and Carmel, they're Harrison and Park branches. Carmel Library is open Monday through Friday right now, so they're open 5 days a week. They have looked at opening on the weekends, I know that, but they haven't opened yet. And then Seaside is 6 days a week, and then you'll see Marina right now is only 5 days a week. Marina, we do have some Marina and Seaside students kind of here in this region. So I think that's that's why I added Marina, even though it's not like walkable, you do have students that live in Marina that come to Monterey High and other areas. So, but with that, the 2 to 6 p.m. to me would be the ideal number. And with that, I think because we're in April right now, I think we could either, my recommendation would be, approve the expanding of the hours once we have the kind of the staffing and the model in place so that we could do that service. Once Kim and I find that kind of appropriate, that we have the staffing and the people in place to do that, but that would be a 2 to 6 p.m.
And that's
Same
contingent
as,
on the budget.
Contingent on the budget, yeah. And because the budget has not been approved, and you never know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. I think anything exactly should be contingent on the staffing and budget approval for the library.
2 to 6 is when PG library is also open.
Correct,
So
yeah.
coincides with that, yes.
And so the timetable would be once, it'll definitely be for the fall, but sometime over the summer, you would end up doing that, or you want to hire the people that you're budgeted for and get them in place before you would do this.
Well, I think one person is our teen librarian. If that does go through, she's already in place. And so the only other person in there is that library assistant. So depending on how Kim and I can work that out with anybody to cover, it's potential that we could do it very early on in the summer. Potentially that we could open those hours.
So the budget approval for the fiscal year starts July, right?
The fiscal year is July 1,
Right.
which is actually a Monday, by the way. Monday, July 1st is that date, but it goes in June. So then in early June, I believe it is when the budget's going to be approved. Now, with that, I imagine we probably cannot recruit a position until it's the position control is approved and all of these, and then the budget is approved. And at that point, that's where I'm hoping we would have possibly a list, because then if we had a list, it helps us expedite that process, expedite the recruitment process if we already have an existing list of candidates rather than getting in the queue of other departments that have new positions.
So as far as the teen librarian, do you have to do a search to go from 3/4 time to full time, or does the position go from the current position goes from 3/4 time to full time?
The current position,
So you don't have to search it.
right?
Thank you.
So that's where basically the main position is just that additional library assistant, and whether we can do some shift or actual additional on-call for the first sessions, until that time. And that'd be a discussion, I think, for Kim and I, just where we think is appropriate for opening that time. But I was just thinking that if we have the discussion now about like what hours we have, what would be appropriate for service, then it helps us kind of plan and start planning accordingly with our on-call and other staff.
And the bookmobile coordinator, is that also a library assistant
Yes,
level position? So theoretically, people who are applying for that could go into a pool for the new position?
that's my hope. I'm not entirely sure because they're both library assistant, and that would, yeah, but because this one was recruited as a full-time, I don't know personally the behind the scenes on the HR rules and that's something I have to learn more about. But
And the other question I have, it's been a while since I had kids of school age in the Monterey School District. Do they start in August? Is that when they?
I believe, it is August. It's like first or second week of August. I think
Yeah.
right now it's pretty early.
It's early.
It's
Yeah.
early out here.
I
So
remember that.
My question is about the hours. So if you don't get budget for the full 4 hours extra, I noticed that the PG library is cut out 1 hour on both Friday and Saturday to compensate. Is that something that you thought about?
Well, I mean, that's only, my thought on that is that's only if you want more, the staff to work more time off the desk, because you can't have somebody work 6 days shift.
Ah,
So you can't have them say like, okay, I want you to take 1 hour off of your Friday and 1 hour off of your Saturday and shift that on to like a Monday. It doesn't help us on that side. So that's basically if you provided like sometimes either a balance of whether you have people work Monday through Friday and then a Tuesday through Saturday and they're working kind of alternate days, that's something that could happen. But I don't want to basically take from the Friday and Saturday service. And Saturdays are one of our busiest days.
mhm.
That reducing service right there, I think is going to hurt people, especially like that 5 to 6 hour. You know, that's one of the things that like we already get the question right now, can you be open later? Right.
Mhm.
And so reducing the closing a little earlier would be
Mm.
more difficult, I think.
I'm glad
In
to
the
hear that.
longer term, also restoring back that 1 hour or that, you know, the 1 hour per day, it would take a lot longer for us to restore and figure out how to restore those 2 hours, I would imagine.
That is good to hear.
The only thought I have is that 2 to 6 makes it more consistent, not only with Pacific Grove, but the other days that we're open till 6. And if you have something that's familiar and a familiar schedule, people are more likely to remember it. So that would be my
Mhm.
personal preference.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I strongly concur that it ought to be 2 to 6 for the reasons that Jen and Brian have already mentioned. But also, you know, we fall all over ourselves trying to accommodate the timing of when the students come. And if they're not going to be there before 2 o'clock, by and large, then I think we ought to wait for them and open at 2. And the reason I think we ought to stay open till 6, in addition to what's already been said, is that there are people who maybe work till 5 and they want to stop at the library and either pick up a book or pick up a child between 5 and 6 on the way home from work. And if we closed at 5, then it would interfere with people that wanted to do those things. So that's another, I think,
Yes.
worthwhile reason to stay open till 6. And if you want to hear another piece of research that, you know, on everything in city council agendas and everything, and even ours, I think, talk about, well, this issue relates to the value driver of the city, and then it's stated, well, there is a value driver in the city documents where they exist. That says, quote, the city council is committed to ensuring Monterey retains its special character, which derives from its heritage, size, and location. And so in 100% keeping with that value driver, I think not only having the library open another day, but in the 2 to 6 slot for all the other reasons that we've discussed today. So I'm just trying to tie it in with, you know, some of the broader, I mean, you know me, a lot of you know me, I have little tolerance for wasting time talking about visions and missions and values and all that stuff, because we got to get down and do it, you know. But at least this is something, the value driver is mentioned repeatedly in the agendas of at least our city council, and I think the library board here too. And so this would be, you know, in keeping with that. And I would also recommend that if this comes through, you know, before COVID and everything, we were open 7 days a week, right? So once we start this, I would like to have a grand reopening of Monday, some kind of little hoop-de-doo, whether it's July 1st or one of the early Mondays that we do it. I'd like to say, hey, a grand reopening, and you know, we can give city council all kinds of credit for approving it and everything, and you know, they'll like that. And that's not the point though, but it's to make the public know that we're really thinking about them, and in keeping with that value driver.
And publicity.
Yeah. So what does this say here? This it says approve, so that means one of us has to make a motion, and I would make a motion that given adequate funding, and stated generally like that, given adequate funding, that we plan to reopen the library on Mondays from 2 to 6. Once that funding is available and in place. Funding, and that means the funding would lead to staff and whatever else is necessary. So
I would be happy to second that.
Do I have a second?
I
Jen
just
seconded.
seconded it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're on agreement on that. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have trustee comments. And I'd like to start with Jennifer, Dr.
Thank you.
Felgood.
Thank you, Harish. I just wanted to let you guys be the first to know that I've decided not to reapply for appointment. I'm having some health challenges right now that make it really difficult for me to get out. I don't have energy. I have to be masked. I can't stay around lots of people. So I just feel like I can't effectively advocate for the library given the health challenges I'm dealing with right now. So I hope to continue being a library advocate through Friends of the Library and whatever ways I can to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to step aside for somebody who has some oomph and lungs that work and red blood cells. So thank you. It's been a joy working with all of you, and I'm really happy what we've accomplished in the 4 years that I have served on the board. So thank you all.
Well, you'll be finishing out your term though.
Yes, yeah.
Bob, you're next.
I would just like to say how pleased I was. We passed the statistical report as part of the consent agenda without any discussion of it, but I just wanted to point out how happy I am to see the regular progress in the program section of that. And by progress, I mean more programs, more people coming to the programs, and it's just a good, nice trend to see, month over month, year over year. And I trust that Jen will know how to use Zoom, and she can
Zoom in and
be an informal consultant to the board after she leaves it officially as a trustee.
Next.
Well, Marcia and I, as part of the advocacy, why can I never say that group? We're very pleased by first our meeting with Hans and Nat to discuss, what are you going to talk about and what are your priorities? And then actually presenting those things to the council and hearing that, something was actually happening as a result of stirring the pot. We are not resting on our laurels. We're going to take advantage of the opportunity and the momentum. And our next thing is thinking about how to reinstate the idea of the G4 of a remodel or rebuild or whatever. So that'll be coming up. In a related thing, back in February, right before the deadline, at Brian's urging or request, I put in 2 proposals to the neighborhood, the NCIP, Neighborhood and Community Improvement Project. One is for interior upgrades to the library and one is for exterior upgrades. And these are not maintenance things. These are upgrades of the wiring, the windows going from single pane to double pane, things like that. Very, very concrete things. And one of the exterior things, which we didn't flesh out very much, but it could become the idea of enclosing the patio and making more user space. I mean, I don't know. I think we ought to push on that a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know what's the right order of things to do. But anyway, the NCIP is meeting right after this meeting at 6 here. And I'm going to try to hang around. The proposals will all be reviewed for a second time, and I'm not sure if that means they're not going to vote on anything until June, but I'm not sure what happens at this point. They want input from the community and from the people who put in the proposals. So I'm going to be there, maybe in person or maybe by Zoom, and Brian's going to be there, maybe in person and maybe by Zoom. And,
One or the other.
and we hope to, make a case for these things that are needed. And if any of you would like to zoom in on yet another meeting, yes.
Marcia?
I think Janie said it all, so ditto and no comment.
My comments as well, starting with, we're gonna miss Jennifer on the board
Yes.
very much. And I have reapplied. My term was also coming to an end. And we'll see where it goes. And,
So you have to reapply? Is that
every
the
4 years,
story?
yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
And go through an interview
I see.
with the mayor.
Hmm.
Yeah. And keep your tongues inside your mouth. I did too.
Okay, I was worried about that. Staff comments.
Thank
Right.
you, Chair Joshi. Yeah, so just as a reminder for anybody watching online, if anybody's watching online the application for trustees, there's a information session at the library for the numerous, not just the library, not just the museums, but other commissions.
There are a lot of them.
There's a lot of positions open throughout the city, and there's an information session this Saturday at Monterey Public Library, 10:15 a.m. And also a Zoom session on Monday, the 29th at 10 a.m. And then just for folks, also just a reminder that we have our strategic plan survey online, and we've been doing an outreach out in the community. So make sure it's also on Have Your Say Monterey. So making sure to provide any comments and feedback on there and share that with your neighbors. And the Monterey Public Library Friends and Foundation does have a special event. Sunday, June 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. will be a trivia program with Sam Buttrey. So if anybody's interested in, I believe it's $30 ticket. Do you remember? 35. And but those tickets are on sale right now at Invest in MPL, and the funding will go to the library. So with that, thanks to all of the staff and the volunteers, Volunteer Appreciation Week as well. And we love our volunteers, over 4,000 hours of service from our volunteers. Been doing fantastic work, doing all aspects of the library service. So thank you to the staff and our volunteers and our trustees. Thank you.
Yes. Any questions? Well, it's time to ask for a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, the meeting is now adjourned. I thought adjournment